it's not like we're lacking data now, okay?
Right.
Data is everywhere, okay? Everyone have their own tool, everyone have their own, I don't know, trusted source, okay?
Right.
What I wanted to hear is that you somehow was able to get this data that we all buried in right now about coronavirus. What is the outbreak current, present, and future state, of course, and we all watching from healthcare perspective, personal, economical, right, business, you name it, cultural, social, you know, all these aspects of our life are affected now. So I did find the research that Causality Link put out there, where you focused on, I guess, applying the technology that you were creating for analysts and for investors, applying it to these different data sources and giving it some clarity in this moment. Can you speculate on this, please?
Fantastic. Yes, I'd be happy to. So there have been a number of others who have focused on purely looking at this data. How can I read about somebody announcing that something surprising has happened? Well, the coronavirus is no longer surprising, right? We're constantly looking at the numbers and we're trying to extrapolate, will the curve flatten? How long will this last? But this is almost secondary in terms of trying to understand what the impact will be on a personal level or on a financial level. And so the essence of Causality Link as a company has been, rather than simply trying to unearth that data point to try to figure out where the fevers are and how the numbers are increasing, which there are a lot of people doing, let's try to understand how experts are explaining what the impact will be. How are they saying that after the coronavirus has occurred, we believe that the number of bookings on the airlines will be decreased by 50% over the next 6 months? You know, how can we actually take those two data points now and remember that somebody who has a good track record and who has explained things accurately in the past has made this connection? And so the focus of our NLP has been on, let's unearth these explanations and let's remember those explanations so that when we get the next data point and we understand that, oh my gosh, now the numbers have increased in terms of cases another 10%, which might mean the impact is going to be felt for another 3 weeks, we can automatically make that connection again and say, look, that piece of knowledge, that's not going to change instantaneously. The relationship between the number of people that are ill and the number of people who are willing to make an airline purchase it might be changing, you know, by some proportion, by some percentage, but the link is still there. And so on an individual basis, we can remember these small links, but we think it's even more interesting to say, let's take A causes B and remember that, and then let's remember that B causes C. Let's start to create a chain so that each one of these data points can be connected, and we can say, is there an influence? Is there a tie-in? Or has nobody ever made that connection in the history of our entire knowledge base, which at this point is about 80 million documents spanning 8 years worth of content? And we think it's even though people are often making new, they're coming up with kind of new ways to say the same thing. So COVID-19 and coronavirus, this isn't really something that we had seen a lot of prior to January of this year, but the idea of an epidemic and what could that cause and how could that influence society has been discussed for many years. Of course, there was Ebola, there was MERS, there was SARS. These are all examples of when people were saying, if this problem becomes worse, here's how we think it will impact financial indicators. And we can learn from that and we can reapply that. And so the research that we've published and we've made public is all based on not just looking for the presence of these key terms, but it's what have we learned over reading all of these documents, and how can we trace how people are they're kind of rediscovering these elements of the model, and where are they kind of changing their mind, where is there something unique occurring, and where is something that's predictable occurring in terms of those trends. So for instance, people talked a lot about how water supplies could be endangered in the case of an epidemic. And we know that people have been worried about that with coronavirus. There's been news even from my own local utility here in Sandy, Utah, saying, gosh, is this a problem? And I think this actually led to some of the behavior we saw where people were buying bottled water like crazy for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And the government came back and said, look, we see no evidence of that being a problem with this particular virus. Don't worry. And so that's interesting because it's one of those kind of conditional things that people understand as a potential issue that we can kind of raise a flag on a little bit earlier, get it in people's mind, and then let them make their own decision as the truth comes to become apparent.
Absolutely.